Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show, your one-stop shop for weird news, movie reviews, otherworldly, and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow Creepin' It Real Show on Twitter at creepin_it. You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com. And you can also go to our website, creepinitshow.com. Welcome to Creepin' It Real, episode 18. I'm one of your hosts, Yardley, and before I introduce my co-hosts, I just want to let everyone know that you can like us on Facebook and Instagram at Creepin' It Real Show. You can follow us on Twitter at creepin_it. And you can also subscribe to us on iTunes and Podbean. If you are on iTunes, if you don't mind, give us a star rating. And if you're feeling extra nice, also give us a review. We definitely want to hear what people think about the show. And by giving us a star rating on iTunes, it helps to move us up to the new and noteworthy podcasts. So that would definitely be great. It'll expand our reach. And the more reach that we get, the more great content that we can bring everyone. So let me introduce my co-host from the great state of California, Moni. How you doing?
Hey, good everybody. What's up? I am super excited, despite the early hour, to talk creepy shit with you guys because nobody else will talk about spooky stuff. Apparently they're all grown-ups or something. And also, oh my gosh, what a professional is Yardley, you guys.
I know.
Like, no swearing, and he gets through it all. And I would be like our stuff because, like, I asked you to, and it'd be, like, super cool if you did. But no, not this guy. He's a pro all the way. So anyways, excited to talk to you guys, and looking forward to it.
Awesome. And Christy, how goes it north of Atlanta?
Yeah, it's going really well. I agree with Moni. Always professional, always eloquent, and then me going, you know, through my whole speech. So kudos to you, Yardley. Just a word to the wise out there, never break a bone after the age of 40, because, yeah, it really sucks. So, yeah, that's all I got. I'm just enjoying some coffee and agreeing. Excited to talk about all our topics today. It's going to be a great show.
Hey, you know what? Even though you're on the mend, at least you're on the upswing, and you'll be up and at it very soon, hopefully.
That's true. I don't think I can continue on with my marathon career, though, because, yeah, I think that's in the toilet. But newsflash, I never had one, so it's okay.
All right. Well, that's a great way for us to dive into our first topic of discussion, which is the new Halloween movie that is going to come out. There was an article in Cinema Blend that was talking about a lot of the new talent that was added to the Halloween movie that's going to be coming up. And we're just going to rattle off a few names of who's returning and some of these newbies, and we'll kind of do a roundabout to kind of see what we all think or if we are familiar with some of these new additions to the cast. So first and foremost, Jamie Lee Curtis is returning. That's a plus, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she's still looking great. And we're going to get the original Michael Myers, who was played by Nick Castle. So that is going to be good. There will definitely be consistency on that front. Now, I'm about to rattle off some of these other names, and what I'll do is I'll kind of add a property that they're attached to. And it'll be great if either of you have heard of any of these actors. When I was looking at them earlier in the week, when I was putting things in the show note, there are a couple of people here who I recognize, but there are some others that you might have to school me about. So we've got Judy. Well, we also have Judy Greer and Andy, Matichak, who's going to fill out the rest of the main cast. But the newbies are Virginia Gardner. She played on a show called Runaways. It also says that she has some horror thriller experience with Tell Me How I Die and Project Almanac. Are those two films that either of you familiar with?
Nope.
Nope, me neither. I'm stumped.
they're definitely newbies. And there's another casting of Miles Robbins. He was in Mozart in the Jungle, My Friend Dahmer, which I did watch a trailer for, and I definitely have to check that out.
Mm-hmm. I forgot about that movie, and I want to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's the lead character, and it's saying that he's going to be in an upcoming episode of X-Files for season 11. So it'll be interesting to see that young man and see what he does in this movie, because based off of the trailer from my friend Dahmer, it's definitely something that interested me. Um, Dylan Arnold. Apparently, there's a Netflix movie called Mudbound, and he has also roles in the TV series SWAT. And there's an upcoming horror movie called 10 that he's attached to. And Drew Scheid. Apparently, he played a drunk toga teen in Stranger Things 2. I didn't bother to even look that up because, he's probably just, do you remember anything with a toga teen that was memorable in Stranger Things? Either
No,
I don't
not
know.
in particular, no.
Once you've seen one toga teen that's drunk, you've seen them all.
Seen them all.
Yeah, it's probably was somebody in the background in that scene with Steve dancing with, I think, what was it, Nancy or something?
Yeah.
It was probably in that house party and whatnot. But as far as Halloween as a movie is concerned, is this something that either of you are excited about, or are you kind of sitting on your hands wondering if they're going to screw it up?
The second thing.
Actually, after I hadn't really given it much thought, and then for the show, and I went in and prepped and read everything, and I love Jamie Lee Curtis. I hope that if she's tied her name to this, that she's making sure that things are going to be on the up and up, and it would be worth her name to be credited. I'm having hope that they can add a better. I liked the old Halloween. I'm excited to see if they can add a more modern twist to it. So I'm going to be an optimist and say that I'm excited to see the finished product for sure. And I did not know at first when I read it, it said Danny McBride, and I thought he would be acting in it, but he's actually he's I believe a producer, one of the producers of this, which is really random to me because he's known for being in comedies with James Franco, and I think he's really funny. I love the movie This Is the End, where they all really make fun of themselves, and it's about the apocalypse, and they play themselves, which I think is hysterical. And so I'm really excited to see what he's got as a director.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm probably with Moni. I'm probably just going to sit on my hands and see what happens. But I think that having low expectations going in usually helps the movie-going experience for certain films. So we'll see. We'll definitely keep on tracking, and we'll see.
Sorry, I wanted to throw in there. I think from the conversations we've had, the three of us, for this podcast, is I might be the biggest old school Halloween fan of us. I think that might be, and I don't know. So this is, first of all, I need a trailer. Like, I would like to see a trailer to get some more information. I know we can read all about the credits from everybody, but I'd like to actually see what they're packing. But I also know that I'm getting old because I went over to the story and I just see this really pretty young girl that I'm sure she's great. I'm sure she's fine. I've never seen her in anything else. It says she's done a couple other things that I've also never seen. And I'm just like, oh, so it just looks to me like another slasher film with some young nobody girl running around. So, and I know you guys love Jamie Lee Curtis, and I have nothing against her, and I need to IMDb it, obviously. I should do my research before I open my mouth, as always. But what has she been doing in excess of? I know she goes and she supports libraries, actually. She goes around to library conventions. But, I mean, movie-wise, has she been doing a lot of acting?
You know what?
Halloween remakes?
When I think of Jamie Lee Curtis, I think of her activism. I don't know. I don't think I have seen anything over the last few years that were things that were notable. But I think what we can do.
Scream Queens. But other than that, I mean.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that she's been involved. I think that we definitely need to go on IMDb, and maybe while we're in this discussion, talking about the next couple of topics, somebody wants to drop in and see what IMDb has to offer. I would be greatly appreciative.
Yeah, just Scream Queens, basically.
First of all, Jamie Lee Curtis is not just a Scream Queen. She's an Activia Queen. Remember that. She's all about the yogurt. So that's what she's been up to for the last couple of years is yogurt. So I'm excited to see her come back.
The TV show, the Ryan Murphy TV show.
Yeah. More yogurt. She's still looking pretty
she
good.
looks
fantastic.
It's
all about digestion after a certain age, you guys.
Hey, you need your probiotics, you know, and she understands that. And I love her. I've always loved her. She through all her movies, she's just been played a really good. She's never done anything really, you know, controversial. She's just seems like a really well-rounded good person. And back, you know, in the early 90s, mid 80s, she was pretty hot. I mean, everybody thought she was amazing, and she still is amazing. So I'm happy to see her come back. And I think you go through, as a woman actor, you sometimes you can go through a phase where people just aren't approaching you for movies due to your age. And then you kind of go and get out of that stump as you get older. For some reason, then there's roles for you, but you've kind of gone past your I'm a hot you know, young actress, and unless you're going to play moms all the time, there's really, I think that's changing now, but back in the olden days, that's really how things were, is you kind of dropped off the map, and then if you're lucky, you picked back up in like a more of an older woman phase. So I'm thinking that's might have been what happened to her, or maybe she just decided, I don't want to really act right now. But I loved A Fish Called Wanda, and I liked True Lies, so I'm really excited to see what she's going to do.
I always think of her from Trading Places, but well, you know what? The next topic of discussion, and it was kind of funny because we were talking prior to starting to record, we were talking about AMC shows, and AMC definitely has a habit of having some shows that are good, but unfortunately The Walking Dead, seeing as that's probably their biggest breadwinner, gets all of the hype. But there is a TV series that's coming out that's based off of Dan Simmons' book, The Terror. And it happens to be a book that I have. I started it and never finished it. And when I watched this trailer, it kind of made me say, you know what? Fuck that book. I'm just going to watch the TV show, and then I'll go back maybe after it's all over and finish the book. The book is a pretty thick book. It's kind of one of those, it's probably, I don't know if it's 1,000 pages, but it's up there. So when I saw the trailer, I thought that it was great, mainly because of the people that they casted. This show, The Terror, it stars Ciarán Hinds, who played Mance Rayder in Game of Thrones. He plays Captain John Franklin, who's the leader of the doomed expedition. You have Mad Men star Jared Harris, who plays Francis Crozier, who serves as the captain of the HMS Terror. You have Tobias Menzies.
My man.
Yeah.
I love
AKA.
him. I am so
Edmure
excited.
Tully.
He
Absolutely.
is also on Outlander, one of my shows that I am obsessed with, and he was absolutely phenomenal. That's the first time I'd really ever seen him on, and I love him. So this is
Outlander, also based off of books.
Yes, I've been reading Outlander since I was a junior in high school. I literally grew up with that story, and when they started the show, I was like, they had better do it right, and they really have. So I just fell in love with him on that show, and so when I saw his name tied to it, I was super happy. This is going to be awesome. And when you look at the IMDb page, as a woman, you get really excited. It's all dudes, and they all are good looking. And I'm like, I'm sure they're not going to, it's in like Antarctica or whatever, so I'm sure they're not going to be all hot and coiffured like on the show. But when you look at the IMDb page, you're like, look at all these hot men.
Well, then I'm in that case.
Yeah.
Somebody say so before.
Hot men, horror, yes please.
Yeah.
Well, we also have Neve Nielsen, who plays a key role of Lady Silence, who is an Inuit woman who joins the crew, and she has a strange connection to the mysterious goings-on that's happening around. And Paul Reddy, Adam Nagatis, Edward Ashley, Matthew McNulty, Liam Garrigan, and Ronan Raftery, they round out the cast. Now, when I watched the trailer, I don't know if there's anything in particular that might have stood out to either of you, but for me, it was the kind of the grayish, gritty look of it.
Yeah.
Just the fact that when you're out and we see a scene in the trailer where ships are literally frozen, where they are. And they have scenes where to kind of emphasize how cold it is and how isolated these guys are. It has a guy trying to look through a what are they called? Not binoculars,
spyglass, like a telescope.
It has him looking through it, and he pulls it off, and it rips off the skin, and then it tears the skin off of his hand. So that was pretty brutal. But the tone of it, and not necessarily knowing what it is that's coming after them, I think that it's great, and it looks, at least to me, that AMC has another show that's very good, that's actually better than their top-rated show, but I'm very curious at how many people who watch AMC are going to tune into this, because I thought that Turn Washington Spies was a great show that was on AMC. It definitely did not get the ratings that something like The Walking Dead does, but at the same time, The Walking Dead is definitely an anomaly when it comes to ratings, especially ratings versus quality. But I think that AMC has actually landed a good one here, and if they can pull it off, I can totally see this as being one of my favorite shows.
Hey, I think we should start following it and maybe using some time, some episodes to discuss what's going on, just to kind of help if it's a quality show. It turns out to be, which it looks.
For sure.
I love the concept. I love old school horror from, Victorian ages. I think it just adds such a cool just tilt to a movie when you see things happening, centuries ago. Or this is probably, 100 years ago. I remember it's based on true events, but of course they're adding a monster, or maybe they're not. I don't know. Maybe there is a monster in the Arctic, but it looks very true to the times, and they definitely don't look like they've cut any corners. So I can't imagine filming this. I don't know where they filmed it. I'd like to know, because a show based on this? I mean, a movie, yeah, and you go out there for a couple of months, but a show, I mean, I would assume this might be a stage, but if not, poor people, wherever they are, because that's freaking miserable.
They're getting well, because, blah.
You know what? It'll be fun to see how they survive in these temperatures. It's little things like that are things that I look for in a show, because as we all know, throughout history, there have been a lot of people who have lost their lives and put their lives on the line in the name of exploration and trying to see what's out there. So to see how people survive these insane temperatures on top of some type of something being on your ass at the same time, that is going to definitely be a treat. So I think it's good that we all look forward to that. And I agree with you, Chrissy. This is definitely something that we have to track and talk about in the future.
Awesome.
All right, so let's get to the nitty gritty, our spoiler review of Perfect Blue. So let me give a brief synopsis of what goes on in this movie, and then we will touch on some key points that we saw in this film. Okay, this film follows Mima Kirogi, the member of a Japanese idol group who retires from music to pursue an acting career. As she becomes a victim of stalking, she starts to lose her perception of reality and fiction. The film deals with the blurring of lines between fantasy and reality in contemporary Japan. It debuted actually on my birthday, February the 28th, 1998. So the first thing that I have to ask both of you, and I'm going to start with Christy, what do we think of animation as a medium for adult suspense? Because usually in the United States, people associate animation with kids, versus in Japan, they provide animated content for kids and adults, not only in DVD or Blu-ray, but also in the form of comic books. So I know that you, Christy, I think, Moni, you had seen this previous to me picking this movie as a topic, correct?
No, I hadn't seen it. So I have thoughts on this as well.
Oh, okay. Well, that's awesome. So both of you are definitely are new to this film. So how do you feel about the content and the medium of animation to provide, good entertainment to adults. We'll start with you, Moni.
It was funny for this particular film. I was enjoying it like pretty much right from the start, but it took until probably the rape scene that I actually got sucked into where the whole time up until then I was sort of like, this is really a good film and it's well done animation, but I do wish or I'd like to see it redone as, adult human actors instead of animation. And then as soon as they had that scene, I sort of just like started just believing it and stopped thinking about it being animated. So well done. Again, you have de-virginized us. It's something we hadn't tried before for Christy and I, but definitely. I mean, I read comic books, so that's not new to me, but definitely for this film, I found myself completely immersed and enjoying it after kind of I bought into it with that scene.
Okay, what about you, Christy?
Well, again, yeah, this was my first time watching anime, and I have friends that are just die hard watchers. I mean, that's all they watch, and I mean, I see them on Facebook posting all these movies I'm watching, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And so I was excited to see what the fuss is all about, and it was probably the perfect movie for me to dip my toe in the water of anime, because it's more of a topic that I would be interested in. I at first struggled with kind of the culture, like the conversations and how everybody's so over the top. It was kind of weird for me. It was like, huh? Because the way they had everybody just, yee, yeah, and then, and I struggle with subtitles sometimes because I'm so ADD. But once I got past all of that and began to just kind of pay more attention to the story, and I had read the not the reviews, but the topic, what it was about, and so I was really looking to try to pay attention and make sure I'm not missing anything. It was good. I liked it. It did suck me in. I think the character, just the typical characters, kind of annoyed me a little bit, like the weirdo dude. I mean, he was really weird, and I was thinking he can't end up being weird or bad because it's so typical. It's such a typical scary weird character that he's probably going to end up being a good guy protecting her or something. And of course I was wrong. Or I guess I was. Honestly, at the end, I'm like, went back almost to every scene trying to figure out, was that real? Was that which part was the real part? So it sucked me in, and at the end, and after you turn off your brain and you just start watching, it surprisingly sucked me in. I was surprised because at first I was annoyed, and then once I got past all the new stuff that I'm not used to and really just started watching the movie, I enjoyed it. So I'm not against anime. I think it's interesting, and I think that the culture change is interesting.
Yeah, well, let's talk about this a little bit in chunks. So just to kind of fill in the listeners on what is going on with these characters in the different arcs, I'm actually going to use Wikipedia as a crutch here, but we're just going to briefly kind of go down the timelines of events, and then we'll kind of close these things out with some of the things that we might have noticed or didn't, or the different twists. I definitely want to get everybody's opinion on how they felt like this film delivered, as far as, faking you out. And as Christy stated, making you think about some of the things that you saw, if whether or not these were things were actually happening or things that were in Mima's head. So we're going to start from the top. Essentially, the main character is Mima, and she was a lead singer of a pop group called Sham, and she decides to leave the group to become an actress because she kind of believed that, being a pop star apparently doesn't have a long lifespan. So it's pretty awesome that she's able to just, switch up and go to acting. But as Moni had mentioned a little bit earlier, and we definitely have to fill the listeners in on it, is all that glitters isn't gold when you decide to to change her career. So her first project was a crime drama. It was called Double Mind, and a lot of her fans were kind of upset with her changing her career, including a person who we'll later find out is called Me Mania. He's definitely a stalker of her in particular. So before she leaves the group, she gets an anonymous fax that's calling her a traitor, which are typical things for people who take, their interest in stars a little bit too far, but she kind of blows that off. Now, eventually, and we find out, and it was kind of fun to go back and watch this because this was like when the internet was in its infant stages, to kind of see an animated character get schooled on how to use the internet. I thought that was pretty funny, but she runs across the website called Mima's Room. And it's essentially a public diary that has a lot of entries in it that seem to be written by her. But the crazy part about it is the detail that are in the entries are, man, it would kind of make your blood boil.
Stalker level, for sure.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And that's
Yeah.
one of the things about this film is these diary entries on this website are so detailed that, as we go along in the movie, she actually starts wondering if she's her or if she's the person who's really writing this. It really psychologically ends up being something that torments her by the time we get to the end of the movie. But as Moni had mentioned, there was a rape scene that was in this animated feature, but the rape scene was just her, acting in this crime scene drama. And it was actually, when you watch it, you're like, man, this is kind of, out of control,
Yeah.
for an animated.
I didn't think they were going to get so detailed with that. I was pretty surprised. I thought they were just going to gloss over it. No, it wasn't porn level, but it was pretty intricate.
Well, there was a moment where it was like, could it possibly be actually happening? Because no one would
Right.
know. I was like, did they provide her with a safe word to cut the scene, so they could stop? Because obviously he had to unzip his pants. I was like, what if he was actually raping her,
It's pretty, yeah, I know, and it's pretty, I mean, it gets pretty intense. And one of the things that we noticed during her first acting gig, she actually hired a friend. It was her manager. Her manager's name is Rumi, who was an ex-pop star. So I think it's always good to have someone who's going through the things that you're going through to be on your team to kind of guide you into a transition. But one of the things that Rumi did was she warned Mima that, getting into acting and doing the type of scenes that she was asked to do would definitely ruin her reputation. So, of course, Mima is her own person. She accepts it, and she keeps doing these scenes, something that is further outraging her fan base, including her stalker. So the scene was really intense, as we mentioned. It traumatizes Mima, as well as her manager Rumi, who basically leaves the room crying after her friend had shot that scene. But as Christy had mentioned, her shooting these scenes are starting to get in Mima's head, and she is starting to have trouble distinguishing, along with these faxes that she's getting from her stalker. She's not able to really distinguish between reality and her work that's in show business. So did this kind of work with you, or did it take a little bit later on into the movie for you to realize that some of the stuff that she was seeing was trauma, or did or did both of you kind of get it that, hey, this is real in this particular situation, or did it confuse you? How were you tracking, Christy?
I didn't know at first that, I thought, first of all, I didn't know the movie she was playing, and I don't know if I'm giving away too much at the beginning, but it was real and not real. I mean, you kind of go back and forth. And then when she starts seeing herself, I thought that was 100% just all delusion. Even towards the end, I still didn't get it. I must be really slow. I always just usually pick things up right away. And this one, I was just completely stumped the entire movie. I was like, huh? And then at the end, I went, oh, whoa. And then I had to go back and, try to place every scene and figure out what was what.
Okay. What about you, Bonnie?
This movie led me by the nose, like exactly, I think, where it would have wanted the audience to go. Because, For me, when Mima started not knowing what was real and what was fake, I was already like, this is an unreliable witness, and she is capable then of being the killer.
Yeah.
So I know I'm getting ahead of where Yardley has explained so far, but for instance, like when when we see her killing the photographer who exploits her,
Yes.
I was like, yes, she did that, and I could totally see her having been the one that killed everybody who's been murdered up to that point, because we've been seeing her not know what's real, not know what's fake, but then they flash back and that turns out to be part of the movie that, or the TV show that she's filming. Or is it? Like,
Yeah.
I was just like, it's her, I figured it out. And then I well, we'll get to that in a minute, so I won't spoil any further. I'll let you continue explaining what happens next, Mr. Yardley.
All right. Well, a lot of people who were involved with the production of Double Bind, including the writer and the photographer, are found murdered. And Mima finds some evidence that makes her a suspect in those murders based off of the entries from the Mima's Room website. Now, at this point, her mental instability is starting to make her doubt her own innocence in those murders. Now, her stalker, Me Mania, during these shoots, he's shown standing in on the double blind set with the filming crew. And, his home life and being obsessive of Mima is revealed when he's shown receiving emails from, the pop idol persona through the website. So at this point, us as viewers, psychologically, we're wondering what the hell, is going on, as well. And I think a lot of people, when they watch this, at some point it might pop into your head that, maybe she has a split, personality. You know what I mean?
I thought that. Yes, that's what I thought. I thought, oh, the rape scene is just, and then her transition, it just pushed her off the deep end, and she's fucking crazy now. Like, that's really what I thought. Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. And one of the most intense things that happens in this movie is at one point on the set, Mania, he finally confronts and attempts to rape Mima. And she's only stopped when Mima knocks him unconscious with a hammer. Now, it's kind of funny because the way that it's shot, it makes you for a second say, wait a minute, is this actually part of the film shoot, or is this happening for real? This is something that they pull over and over, in this movie. And after she hits Me Mania and knocks him unconscious, of course, she's totally shook. And her manager, Rumi, finds her backstage immediately afterwards. And Me Mania's blood and body are not found on the empty set. So, of course, that trips her out and freaks her out. As a viewer, it trips me out, too, because now I'm wondering, okay, am I psychologically screwed up as well, at this point? So at that point, after filming those scenes, I think that we kind of discussed, the okie doke that they constantly pull on this. But at this point, were both of you kind of in the mindset that either it's Mima with a split personality, or if you believe that Me Mania was the person who was capable of doing those things, at this point, did you kind of put all the onus on the bad things happening being Me Mania? Because I totally believe that it's debatable after you watch this movie. Me Mania is a victim as well in this, but I'll cut it to you first, Christy.
I thought it was all her, because I still had a hard time believing that this guy that's so weird looking is bad, because it's such a stereotypical character of bad, so I kept thinking, oh, he did, but then once he attacked her, I still didn't think that it was him doing the murders. I still thought it was her. So I was still thinking, okay, he's attacked her and he is bad, but he's not I still thought it was her murdering the people that, and so that's where I was at this point.
Okay. Did it how did that sit with you, Moni, at this point? Were you all in on Me Mania being the the big baddie in this, or are you still kind of suspect of Mima?
So I won't spoil. We're still not quite where I was going to say before, so I won't spoil it. But I suspected who it ended up being earlier, because as any good mystery, well-written mystery, which this is, will do, it had dropped some subtle clues that led me to be like, it could be this person. However, at this point, first of all, I was starting to get a little tired. I was like, okay, I am not smart enough to keep up with, like, is this real? Is this not real? Like, is this part of the TV show? Therefore, it's real, but not real. Like, I am so confused, and I'm getting a little bit over it by now because this film has pulled this on us so many times. So at this point, yeah,
you're like, I was kind of like, what is happening here?
Yeah, it's like, if this happens one more time, I may just like leave. I don't know. But so at this point, I stopped suspecting the person who it ends up being, and thought that it was maybe a combination of me mania and Mima. Mima being someone who makes things up and doesn't know what's real, but also me mania possibly being the actual killer. So I thought that was a brilliant twist, at least for me, in throwing me off who it ended up being.
Yes, that's definitely the case. And I guess what we can do is we're just going to dive into pretty much what the climax of this movie was. So after Mima's attack at the shoot site, her manager Rumi offers to drive her home. So upon arriving, Mima tries to place a call and can't, and she looks around and she realizes she's in a room that's actually decorated to resemble her own apartment that we saw at the beginning of the film. And when Mima encounters Rumi a little bit later, her manager is wearing a replica of Mima's sham costume and fully believing in a crazy episode of Super Crazy that she is Mima herself. So it's basically revealed that the person who was doing the website and had all of these details in her life was actually her own manager. Her and Me Mania were the ones that were responsible for the murders of these people that were in Mima's life. And this, at least for me, when we get this revelation, this is when it starts getting even more creepy, because Rumi is totally all in, and essentially she convinced Me Mania through the website that she created that he needs to get rid of the fake Rumi so that she, the real Rumi, can can be safe and can do her thing. So
okay,
I thought that was cool.
I have a question, because this is really bothering me. At the end of the movie, I went back and thought about this, and that's what I thought. What you're explaining is what I thought happened, but she was seeing herself like float around, in scenes where she was like floating around. So so she's picked up the real imposter and then was having delusions about the real imposter? Is that basically what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
She part really bothered me.
Delusions. One of the things that I had actually put in the show notes, there is actually something called folie à deux, which is French for madness of two. It's shared psychosis. It's a psychiatric syndrome in which symptoms of a delusional belief and sometimes hallucinations are transmitted from one individual to another. I didn't even know that was a damn thing. Have y'all heard about that?
I've never heard of it, but in the movie Perfect Blue, it says several times, which I guess is basically the tagline of the whole movie, is delusions can't become real life. And of course, in this case, they were. And so, I mean, they say it over and over again as a tagline of the movie that she's in. So I think if I had been paying attention better, or at least put two and two together, I mean, I was paying attention, that's exactly what's happening, is delusions are becoming real life, because they're saying, as the part in this movie, delusions can't become real life. So of course, in this instance, they can.
Well, I think it's one of those things where it's one of those things about belief. If you believe in it enough, it can be real to you. And I think that's kind of the one of the points that they were making in this movie. Now, let's talk about what happens in this movie down the stretch, because after Mima realizes what's going on with Rumi, at that point. As Christy had mentioned, she's actually getting chased down the street by Rumi, who is trying to kill her, because at the end of the day, if you want something done right, I guess you have to do it yourself. So it was a pretty harrowing chase through the streets of I think they were in Tokyo. It was very interesting, and basically she's having all of these delusions. What I thought was really great was, the fight itself was pretty cool. It involved, rooftops, fire escapes, falling, people bleeding through the streets, and I thought it was great. But I really thought the way that they executed the death of Rumi, where she basically, and for a split second, she kind of realizes who she is, and then she kind of snaps back into thinking that she is Mima. I think Mima hits her, something falls off of her costume. She reaches down to get it, and she's actually temporarily impaled on some glass from a fight, from the fight that they were having seconds earlier. And in true anime style, nobody does the sound effects of people bleeding out better than the Japanese. And I thought that it was interesting, and I really do need both of your opinions on this. Now, if you're a person, if you've gone through all of these things, because there's a moment where Rumi is obviously, she's dying at that point, and she's about to get hit by a truck. Now, do either of you, even in your delusions, or even if you're thinking this is in real life, would you have pushed the person who was trying to kill you and switch identities with you out of danger? Because it seemed like Rumi was ready to embrace, like she was going to be able to be released from whatever this was, with getting hit and killed by the truck. But as we see, Mima pushes her out the way. So is that something that either of you would have done, or do you think that this was just a natural reflex from the character of Mima as a person that, she just kind of zoned out and was like, I got to save this person?
That second thing. Because I would have kicked the bitch in front of the truck, first of all. But I'm not as sweet as Mima was. So.
No, I think my shock factor would have been just sit there and watch the bitch die. But after it happened, and I was really confused, and I'm thinking, well, maybe she still thinks that's herself. Maybe she thinks she's saving herself. And clearly it's not. I didn't know. And so that's kind of what because I did wonder why she would risk her life to save this person. And my only conclusion was maybe she still thinks that's her. So she's saving herself? I don't know, but
well, I doubt this is the case, but I just thought of it, so it's probably dumb. But what if she, how she had been one of the suspects in some of the murders? So what if she was afraid that if this woman turned up dead too, and she was the only witness around, that there would be nobody to, there'd be no other witnesses to say that she wasn't the one actually behind all of this?
Yeah,
possible.
True. That's definitely possible, but however,
I doubt she had that time to think about it in the moment
exactly.
they were in. But
That's what I was about to say. I don't think.
Like I said, probably dumb disclaimer, but a thought.
You know what? Maybe subconsciously, that's something that she could have
I
definitely.
like the saving herself. And let's go with what Christy said. That's
exactly.
Smart.
that sounds a little bit more nuanced. So I'll definitely co-sign going with her on that. But we find out a little bit later on in the show, after she saves Rumi's life, we kind of fast forward to Rumi being in a mental health institution, and Mima actually goes there to kind of check in on the situation. And one of the things that we hear when they close out was basically Mima saying, hey, I'm the real me. And I guess, we have to pretty much accept that after that incident, her career actually kept going on. So it didn't break her in any way, but I just kind of, I love the full circle nature of it, but I do kind of push back, and granted, it's the ending, and I think that after all of the things that we're taking through in this movie, a high point would be, hey, psychologically, Mima's okay, but it seems like something like this would definitely be something that would stick with someone for the rest of their life. So I thought the movie was solid. Honestly, when it comes to anime suspense, I haven't seen a ton of suspense as far as animation is concerned, but of all of the ones that I have seen, I have to admit that I really really did like this one. Like both of you, it probably takes you a good 20 minutes in before you kind of really get sucked in. But for the most part, I can definitely appreciate adult content in the area of animation.
I would, and if I didn't have you to kind of break down the movie with, I would have gone back and watched it again, because by the end you realize so much of what you thought isn't what you thought, and you want to go back with new eyes and watch it again. I would probably like, if anybody out there wants to kind of wants us to give them an example, I would say this is a buffet combined of Black Swan, Inception, and like Vertigo, Hitchcock's Vertigo. Very Inception in that there's so many different quote unquote realities to it. The Black Swan, of course, because you have the star who you think has, different personalities, or, people are mysteriously dying, and then just Hitchcock, because of the whole overall concept is very Hitchcock-like. So I would have definitely gone back and watched it again after I watched it, because I was so kind of confused, and I would need to clarify things.
Well, it's definitely one of those deals where the more that you watch it, you'll always find something that you might not have necessarily saw on the first, second, or third viewing. So it definitely has some rewatch ability. And quickly, before we close out talking about this, let's just kind of talk about the three main characters in this. Rumi as a character overall, I thought that they kind of sold, her journey pretty good. She definitely, she's definitely a great actress, because she definitely plays a part of a of a victim very well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of, I thought that it was at worst pretty solid how her overall arc was in this movie. As far as me Mania as a character, Christy was mentioning some things earlier about, the ugly creepy guy obviously has to be, the ultimate bad guy. And as I had mentioned earlier, there are things that are in this show, in this movie, where you could make the case that B Mania was definitely a victim, because we find out that it's Rumi that he's talking to through the website. It's Rumi that's gassing up his obsession with Mima to the point where she can convince him to go out and, and to kill, to kind of get rid of her doppelganger, which is kind of funny. And I thought that Rumi as a character was pretty dope, just mainly from the point of how obsessed that she was to do the website, and she actually sucked in our main character to actually thinking that she was the one that was producing the content, and she was crazy. So I thought that it worked. So I kind of want to go around the table here, so to speak, and we'll start with you, Moni. The three main characters, what did you like or dislike about them?
Well, Mima's vulnerability, I thought it was a really believable character arc that she went through from, being this pop star that doesn't want to do it anymore and has reservations about that. And I really liked the moment where she goes to Rumi's office, actually, to her team's office, and the other two girls from Cham are celebrating their number 18 or 80 something, I think, debut on the charts with their new single, and saying they're so good as a duo. And she just kind of, it's not necessarily that she wants to go back to it, but it's sort of, maybe I would have been more successful if I did that. Like, there's stuff that she goes through as she's making this life transition that is really normal and really, like, makes her like a real person, and it's one of the things that makes it not feel like an anime per se. And then, as you were saying about Me Mania, I mean, being the ugly guy is a little on the nose, like, oh, this is going to be the creepy guy because he's got the creepy face. But I really did like in the beginning, the very first scene where Cham is performing, and those troublemakers in the crowd start throwing things and talking shit, and he actually tries to get them to stop. Like, that's someone who could have gone either way. He could have been a really good ally for the real Mima, and a good, nice fan, had Rumi not come along and jacked them all up and got them all, thinking that this was not really her. So that was kind of interesting. So again, like you were saying, Yardley, about him possibly being, the argument being that he could have been the victim. I mean, he was someone who was susceptible to becoming a creepy stalker, but he could have been a nice creepy stalker instead of someone who came to try to rape and kill her, or did he or did he not? I'm not really sure, but someone who was capable of killing, that definitely for sure. And then Rumi, I wanted to say, now that we've spoiled who, that she was behind it all, I think they did a really good job dropping the clues in as a mystery writing, for the script, where not only do you see her, a good manager is going to be worried about her talent's career, so is going to have reservations about one of her first scenes being a really graphic rape scene. But, the parts where she keeps saying she's a pop star, she's a famous pop star, we need to push that. And it's like, that's going a little against what your client has expressed that they want at this point in their career. So that's kind of a red flag right there, that at best, the talent, the client, and the manager are at odds with where she wants her career to go. Because she has said, I am done with being a pop star. And her manager keeps trying to say, push her as a pop star. And it's like, there's something just a little off there. And, someone who cares about Mimo could definitely cry over watching her do a scene like that. But again, there's another little mini red flag about her mental stability and how deeply involved with her she is. So yeah, there were a few hints that they did a good job throwing me off of once we got to the point where, Me-Mania maybe attacks Mima.
All right, Christy.
Yeah. Well, here was an interesting part that I kind of didn't really get a good conclusion of, is after she does the rape scene, then she goes and gets photographed, and it turns into a nude shoot. And I really didn't see, I know that this is another thing that kind of propels Me-Mania into his just delusion and anger that this is not the real Mimi, because real Mimi wouldn't do something like this. But they didn't really pull any more of that situation into the movie. I thought they would probably do more with it, and they really didn't. And I guess maybe it was just kind of a small little part, but I liked watching her kind of go from this innocent little pop princess that has the little tutu and the cute little doll-like costumes, into literally drinking from the fire hydrant and acting, going to rape scenes, and then doing this nude photograph session and being in magazines nude, and just how that kind of propels the two characters that are obsessed with her into finally pushing and going after her hardcore about, getting rid of her. Me-Mania, I can't look at him at all as a victim, because he tried to rape her. I mean, that was right there, was the end for me. I mean, I could say, yeah, he tried to kill her because he doesn't think she's the real Mimi, or Mimi, whatever, however you say her name. But after that part of it, no, sorry, buddy, you don't get a pass just because of that. I mean, there's a point of thinking somebody's an imposter or dangerous and you're killing them, but the whole now I get to rape you part was like, no. But I get why they did that, because the confusion between the reality and the show was, kind of bouncing back and forth. So you're really wondering if that is even really happening at that point, because they had been going back and forth so much. Rumi, I was completely clueless. I did not see any red flags. I remember thinking how odd it is that she's so insistent on her being a pop person versus an actress. But I just thought maybe that's just normal. Maybe that's how, the Japanese culture is. She seems awfully invested in Mima's journey, even more so than just a manager, but maybe they're close friends. Maybe I just haven't reached to that point where I can quite understand their relationship, because I completely glossed over her character. It didn't really penetrate to me that she was a main character of the movie at all.
Well, I think that part of it was seeing as Rumi was thinking that she was Mima, in a way, probably in her head, she was thinking by Mima doing these things and acting, like you say, in the photographs and the rape scenes and all of that stuff. I think on the inside, she's probably thinking that Mima is tainting her reputation.
Yes.
She kind of thinks that they're the same person. But I think that, overall, actually, you know what, before I talk about one of the things that we're going to discuss in next week's podcast, on a scale of 1 to 5, what would you rate it, Christy?
I really am surprised to say I definitely give it a solid 4.2. I mean, it was good. It was different, and I love Hitchcock, and I think it really pulled me into a lot of very Hitchcockian. And I also forgot to say that, I had said I compared it to Black Swan. I kept thinking that in the movie, because even the title, the description of the movie, I was like, oh, this sounds very Black Swan. And I really enjoyed Black Swan. Actually, I read after the movie that the writer of Black Swan, Darren Aronofsky, or however you say his name, apparently pulled a lot of his ideas from this movie into Black Swan. So that made me happy that I was at least on somebody's page and something about this movie, because I was so clueless through the whole movie that I was like, how very Black Swan. And then I went back and read somewhere when they were, as I just did some, quick homework on Perfect Blue, as, in the movie itself. And they had said that he actually pulled some ideas into Black Swan from Perfect Blue. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So I would definitely, it's a solid, almost a 4.5, I would say, just based on the sheer uniqueness of it.
Okay, well, you know what? That's what's up. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm just going to briefly talk about one of the topics of conversation.
Hey, where's my star review?
Oh, I am so sorry.
And yours, Yardley. I want to hear what you think.
My turn.
I actually thought that I had gave it a 4 out of 5 earlier, but maybe that was just me psychologically not knowing that it was really me that did it. Actually, there is at 3:00. But, okay, let's go ahead and get your star review, and then I'll give my official star review after you, Moni.
I'd go 4.5, 4.5, and just real quick too, how funny was it, the use of internet in this, how she's having to have it explained to her, like what a website is and
what's
how it
a
works
double
click.
click.
That was kind of fun. And then I felt like some of the topics, like with the exploitation through the photographs that they took, I mean, yes, she knew that there was nudity involved in the shoot, but that wasn't what she expected to have, like maybe on the cover. I felt like a lot of the topics were really relevant to some of the movements that are going on with women right now. And, the uses of color, like how things start to be in red when they start to go to shit. And there's just a lot of really interesting things that Yardley mentioned about being able to go back and watch it more times and notice more things. So I just thought it was really thought-provoking and really interesting. The voice acting was wonderful, and a lot of things that you maybe couldn't do or get away with if you were actually using real actors, physical people. And so 4.5 for me. I really liked it.
I agree, but it ain't no Jeepers Creepers 3, I'll tell you that.
What could ever be, though?
I was actually looking, and apparently there's a live action version of this, but it's garbage though. Apparently, it's just not any good. So I don't know if I'm necessarily going to go there. But the one thing that will keep us excited for 2018 are the upcoming horror movies. So what I'm going to do is at some point early in the week, I am going to post a link to the top upcoming horror movies of 2018. And very quickly, I'm just going to rattle off these movies that we'll have as a topic of discussion next week. So Slender Man, Truth or Dare, The New Mutants, Insidious 4, Winchester, The Open House, A Quiet Place, Annihilation, Mom and Dad, The Strangers, and Day of the Dead. I really look forward to talking about these next week. But of all of these trailers that are out, and Creepers, we definitely want your feedback on this. We want to know which of these movies are you the most excited about? Because I actually watched this mashup of all of these trailers, and there were a couple that were in there that actually made my antennas perk up, namely the Truth or Dare trailer, as well as there's a newer trailer for Winchester and anything with Natalie Portman, which would be Annihilation, are things that are going to interest me. But I can't wait to hear your opinions on Truth or Dare and Annihilation. So it's going to be fun. And next week is all Christy, so I don't know how she's going to format the show, but
I don't know
we
either.
definitely have a lot of content. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know yet. I've got ideas, and I will try to, in the future, have my ideas cemented before the movie before, so we can discuss it. So my bad, but hey, I've been so busy laying in this bed that I just couldn't get to it. So
all that laying there.
my apologies.
That made you sound really bad. I said, all that laying there is really hard work. I hope you're getting paid for that. Like, what?
Oh God.
Oh my gosh,
She
I'm
makes a
sure
living
she'll
on her
find
back. What?
Now, well, on that note, unless there's anything else that either of you want to talk about, we can close this thing up.
I'm done.
Off to the football games, y'all.
Woohoo!
Okay. Well, that's what's up. As usual, it's definitely been a pleasure, and we can't wait to talk about these new horror movies of 2018 on our next show. And as always, it's been a pleasure, and we're out.
See ya.